Hello, everyone. It is Saturday. I have to think about that. It's Saturday, and that means this chat with Matt. We're glad to have each and every one of you join us. For those of you that are our loyal viewers, if you will, we really appreciate your feedback. Please continue to send that in. And for those of you that are new to what we do, welcome, welcome, welcome. Nadeem, how you doing today, sir?
Oh, doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. It's Saturday. I mean, you can't get any better than that. We had, the last month was actually pretty good as far as us talking to new people and really connecting with the business community. And I think people are really starting to buy into the message that you've been preaching this last couple of years about getting their infrastructure together. So it's been very satisfying to see that come together.
Yeah. So I mean, we've been talking about a lot of things that we kind of, well, the entire IT community kind of predicted were going to happen, and then they started happening. And I think
Yep,
that momentum is now carrying over to everybody, where business decision makers are now realizing that they have to change how they handle IT.
that's correct.
Um, yeah, it's more and more businesses are looking at it more than just a cost center.
Yeah,
It's becoming more of a strategic asset to the business.
yeah, that's correct. And then I mean, I think that at the very onset, when we were doing this and really pivoting, uh, quite a few people didn't understand, how IT was an actual asset, and more importantly, how your business growth and your technology are, hand in hand. And now, the conversations, yeah, they've absolutely changed. Now people are really starting to understand that. I think it was really, quite honestly, with everything with COVID, with businesses having to actually move out of the traditional environment and having to rethink things. Now I think they're not just rethinking, oh, how our work is going to get that work done and all that other good stuff. They're rethinking, just like you said, the overall attitude towards technology, IT, and how it affects their business. So I'm excited to see how that continues to grow as the months and years continue on.
Right, right. Yeah, it's going to be. I think things are going to change. Not only that, but one of the other things that we are noticing is more and more companies are trying to get themselves compliant to
Yeah.
standards.
Yep.
So I think it's becoming um, more widely accepted, and people realize that they, I mean, IT pretty much is operations. If
That's
IT
correct.
breaks or if a
That's
breach
correct.
happens, everything comes to a halt. And I think and as time goes on, I think it's going to be more and more ingrained in every enterprise. Um, that's that's advancement. That's progress. That's automating things with technology, where in the past, we had to use paper to keep track of things. Well, now we do it digitally. I mean, the same thing. It just keeps, getting bigger and bigger. And, uh, if something needs to be remembered, let a system do that. Don't rely on a human to remember stuff, right?
That's
So,
correct.
anyway, so along with that, what are we going to talk about today, Mac?
Well, yeah, speaking of threats, Microsoft has made a change as far as Office is concerned, and they're blocking macros by default. That's a very interesting thing that they're doing, and I think with the number of people that are just opening files, for lack of a better term, all willy nilly, I think it was something that needed to be done. So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that and what exactly that means for the average or the enterprise user.
Yeah, so it wasn't just users opening files willy nilly per se, but it was more about files being sent over the internet, whether they were shared via Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever, or whether they were emailed back and forth. And some of these files had macros in them that could be malicious, and a lot of times the sender did not even realize that they had some malicious macro in their file, right? Whether it's Word or Excel file, whatever it is. And this actually is years old story, and this is kind of historic with Microsoft, right? So it's the same thing that happened with Internet Explorer, right? ActiveX, it was that same thing. So Microsoft always tries to bring new technologies to the public that will allow people to do more. But then sometimes those same technologies that allow people to do more allow the bad guys to do more as well.
Absolutely.
So then they have to kind of backtrack and start securing things. And that's the same thing that happened with VBA, right? It was a great thing to have some sort of automation built into your documents, Word or Excel files. Um, that was great, but the problem was that automation can be taken advantage of. So if there's no checks and balances, then that causes a problem. Now, for the enterprise, if you have a domain, we've always been able to, well, for the longest time, not initially, but for the longest time, we've had group policy settings where we can restrict VBAs from automatically running, or we can and let me show you, let me share a document here. I think that might make more sense. So in this document, in this flow chart here, so right here, in step one, it basically goes over the behavior, how Office handled and now handles macros. So user opens the file. If it is from a trusted location, macros are enabled, right? That's a good thing, right? If it's a trusted location, it's got a certificate in it, like the publisher is trusted, it's got a certificate of trust. We're going to enable macros, do your full automation, no problem. If it is not, then there were certain things that started to happen. So if you had your cloud policy block macros, then macros were blocked, right? But if it did not block macros, then it looked at your local policy, and this is coming from your group policy in Active Directory, which a lot of enterprises have. So then it would look at that local policy, and if macros were blocked, it would show you that message in the trust bar. If not, then it would go to the next step, which was, if it's a previously trusted document, macros are enabled. So number 7 is what's new. So what Microsoft is doing now is that even, before, if it was a previously trusted document, yes, macros were enabled, and it stopped there. Now, if it was not a previously trusted document, so it's not a document that you've opened before and trusted in the past, then macros are not going to be enabled. So macros are going to be disabled by default unless there was a history of trust with that document. So that's a big change here.
So if we were to put this in, I guess, a real world scenario, if I send a document for the first time to you, be it a file, whatever the case may be, from what I was reading, is there going to be? It seems like there's going to be a pop-up that says, whatever, this is the first time, or just be careful, unnamed source, whatever the case may be. Is it going to be a one-time pop-up? Is it going to be multiple pop-ups before you are able to accept it? How does that work?
So it's in the trust bar up at the top. So first you have the menus, then you have the toolbar. Right below that, there's a trust bar. You don't normally see it unless something happens, right? Unless there's a trust issue, then that bar will pop up, and it's easy to see because it's a different color. So that trust bar will show you if that document has macros or not. Now, if you send me a document, I open it and I see that and I trust it, so I trust that document. Next time I open that same document, it's not going to ask me again because there's already trust established now.
Gotcha.
If there is no trust established, then it's going to ask me every time. Now, what's different is if there is no history and there is no trust, it is not going to open that macro. That macro is going to be blocked. I have to go through and click on that bar and explicitly say, yes, I want to open this macro.
That was my next
And
question.
once that happens, then it becomes trusted. So now, the weakest link, whenever we talk about security, the weakest link is always the human factor.
Yeah.
Because once you teach a user how they can approve certain macros and they start getting into that behavior of approving macros, they're not going to dig into it and see, oh, well, this is not trusted. Should I approve? They're just going to go through and approve it. For example, if my accountant sent me a document and that document had a macro embedded in it, and I didn't know what a macro is, but I trust my accountant, so I would go in and enable that macro if I got prompted for it, right? Because I trust my accountant. Now, my accountant may not even know that they had that macro in that document. Fortunately, I know if my accountant is sending me something, whether it needs to have a macro in it or not. And if there is a macro, I'm not going to open that document. I'm going to get with my accountant and say, hey, fix your systems before you start sending me stuff, right? But a normal person will not know that. They will say, all they're seeing is, oh, my accountant sent me something. Let me just enable the macros because my accountant sent me something. And that has been, that process has been taken advantage of by the bad guys through history. In back in the days, I don't know if anybody recalls, but you used to get emails from people people in your contact list, and the reason that was because you trust people in your contact list. You're prone to open those messages, and of course they had infections and they did direct havoc. And then once they get your machine, then the email will send itself to all of your contacts, and that's how they used to spread. So that's historically has been the weak link, is the human factor. So this is a good step. This is a step in the right direction by Microsoft, but Microsoft by themselves can only take it so far. The big step, the bigger thing that we need to figure out is end user training.
Yeah.
Continuous end user training ourselves. I mean, our techs, everybody has to go through a monthly training. Now, we deal with this thing on a daily basis, and yet we put our people through this training. That should be mandatory to any company out there for their users to go through this training. And usually it's something easy. It's like maybe 5 minutes, you watch a video and you go through a little test, it's not really a test. There's no repercussions, but basically it's checking if you watched that video and you understood the content of that video. And it goes that training should be geared towards upcoming threats. So not reactive, but a little more on the proactive side of things, right? And that's what we try to do. That's why we have a monthly training with our techs, is so that they are a little ahead of that curve. They know what's going to be coming around that curve, so they can be cautious and take the proper precautions.
But we used to, well, I think we still do have it from the end users, where we, with our run a test of the domain and see if it was floating on the dark web. And, and then with that, I think we were giving people the option, or we were giving companies the ability to test their employees by sending an email and seeing whether or not they would open that email, or whether or not they were able to understand if it was a spoof or phishing or malicious email. And I remember quite a few times, those failure rates were high. They were very high. Yeah. But I think through training, they lowered. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two components of what you're referring to. So there was the training component. Yep. Where we train people and then we test people if they've watched those training videos or articles. And then there was a phishing simulation. Yep. Module, right? And it's that phishing simulation that a lot of people failed on, right? So basically that's a test. Our system pretends to be the bad guy, and it's trying to make the users do something to get something from them. And a lot of times people fail that. So, and that all boils down to back to training. If a user fails simulations, 40-50% of the time, we need to put that user back through training. Now, I know a lot of enterprises out there, their HR is now demanding any user onboarded go through training. Yep. So a lot of companies are kind of getting around that mindset that, hey, yeah, users are a weak link and they do need to be trained. Like 5, 10 years ago, I always used to hear from people, oh, I trust my users. We hire the best people, and it's like, it has nothing to do with trust. It has nothing to do with how smart a person is. It's just human nature. And training is what gets you to that point where now you have a good baseline where majority of your staff is not going to fall for some of these scams. It's almost like, people people who do martial arts or something, they train over and over, because when the time comes, now they don't have to think about it, they already know what to do. That's the same thing. So we want to train our users over and over, so when they do get a real phishing attack, they already know what to do. That's all it is.
So, and it's kind of funny you were mentioning that. I remember when I was, calling on, decision makers and, owners and saying, hey, this is what we have in regards to the phishing and the dark web security. And I remember one guy said, "Oh, there's no way to prevent that. That's just a waste of time. People are always going to open bad mail, and we're just going to have to figure out a way to fix it. But that and training them, that doesn't work." And I'm like, wait a minute, really?
So let me ask you this, and I don't know if you recall, but what was the size of that company where the owner told you this?
Oh, of course, it was the smaller size.
So maybe 15, 20 users.
Yeah.
So any company that is 100 users or more, they have formal training processes in place.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm starting to wonder, if we were to reach out to that same person now, what size would he be? Probably still 15, 20 users. It's because of that mindset.
Yes, absolutely.
What he's saying, what he's thinking is, it's not a scalable solution, but training, having a formal training process, that's a scalable solution, because you can automate that training and get people through. And it's not just the training that we're automating. We're also testing the users to make sure that there is knowledge retention going on. Yep. Right. So yeah. And that's, in any business, you have to kind of understand that, I don't want to say all, but most humans are trainable.
That's true.
Right. So, I mean, we've had people who, who came with, like, I mean, even at PCSN, we've had techs who had very little expertise in certain technologies, but then over time they grew, and I mean, they learned so much stuff, and it's because humans are trainable. Maybe some are more trainable than others. That can be debated, but it's like, any living thing is trainable, I think. I mean, even dogs are trainable, and I mean, it's so yeah. I mean, saying that training does not work, that's a fallacy. That's almost like, I think it was Intel CEO one time said that anything that needs to be discovered is already discovered. I mean, he was so wrong. And then there was another guy who said that Moore's law is not valid anymore. Moore's law doesn't work anymore. That was so wrong. I mean,
That's very wrong.
This was like 5 or 8 years ago, and look at what happened just within the last few years. I mean, the chips have, like, I mean, exponentially grown in power, and not only grown in power, but also have better efficiencies at higher performance rates. Yep. I mean, so those kind of things, I think, are just, people trying to get attention, but thinking that humans are not trainable, or training does not make an impact on business, that is wrong. I mean, it's like I was talking only yesterday, I think in one of our calls. I mean, I learned something new almost every day. Every day. I mean, it might be something small, but I learned something new almost every day. It's going to be a sad day if a day goes by that I did not learn something, right? And it's not just learning from our, business advisors or coaches or those people. I'm talking about
Right.
learning just interacting with other people, right? I mean, just learning, things as you interact in life. That's the thing. So I think humans are very trainable, and I think most companies, especially when it comes to IT, they need to have some sort of a formalized training process in place. Now, this is so important that I think pretty much all of the compliance out there, compliance options that companies have, like, whether you go with SOX or HIPAA or anything, all of those have to have a training component in there. I don't know of any compliance certification that does not have a training component in it. It's
That's
that
correct.
important.
Especially now. I mean, I have a hard time understanding some of the business owners that I talk to, and if you have an IT guy that has been taking care of your service and he's doing a decent job, fine, that's great. But I mean, when you sit people down now, and ladies and gentlemen, there hasn't been a time that I've seen this with Nadeem that there hasn't been like all these light bulbs that go off because we're so thorough, especially in this component, of when we talk to CEOs where they're like, well, hell, we're not doing that, and now I think more CEOs are becoming a lot more cognizant as far as, well, what is it that we're not doing that's, and like you said, the compliance piece, what are we not doing that's going to get us in trouble a year from now when we're not looking, but you got a segment of owners that just feel like they're okay, and then they end up getting hit, and they can't stay in business.
Yeah, and the thing is, what you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know, yeah.
I mean, there's no getting around it. I mean, so it's very easy to kind of fool yourself into, uh, thinking that everything is fine. Or thinking that, oh, we haven't had any issues in the last 6 months, everything is fine. Or, oh yeah, we had a breach, but everybody has a breach. That's life. It's fine. It's not, and it shouldn't be that way. But yeah, so this is a welcome change from Microsoft, that they are by default going to block untrusted VBA scripts, and for a lot of people out there, if you open an Excel file and it prompts you, hey, this file has a macro. Do you want to enable macros or disable them? It'll give you the option, enable or disable. Don't enable them unless it needs to be enabled. So understand what that macro is doing before enabling it. And that's what I would do. That's what everybody does. Now, if there is some automation built in, that requires that macro to be enabled, then yeah, by all means, go ahead and enable it. That's what it's there for. But then if you don't know, if you're unsure, it could be just a malicious macro that is going to maybe scrape your hard drive for personally identifiable information and send it to the bad guys.
Holy crap, I didn't know. Oh, wow. Okay, that's probably going to have to be another video. Really?
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be another video, but
that definitely
that's,
be another
that's
video.
how critical this is, and that's why Microsoft is making this change. It's going to piss off a few people, especially people who, who work in these spreadsheets and create these VBAs. They're going to be like, oh man, now I got to click this option, or now I got to trust it, or now I have to get a certificate of trust and embed it in my macro. Yeah, it's extra work, but that security that you took from down here to up here is so worth it.
It's so worth it. Yeah. Awesome.
So I think with that, Mac, we'll call it a day. Enjoy the good weather out there, and
yes, sir.
Hope everybody had a great week and has an even better week next week.
Start of a new month. We'll see everybody next week.
Have a good one, guys.
Have a good one.